Let's start with the trivial matter, Neil. Could the world end in 5 years? Is that possible?
Could it?
Yeah.
It's going to, man. This is a true story.
That's a downer.
I'm slightly worried there's people from MI5 in the audience. Yeah.
Ready.
They can't kill us for a secret that's not secret anymore. Is that not right?
That is true.
Now, am I right in thinking that song that we heard at the end, the classic David Bowie song,
Yeah.
5 years, was kind of partly the inspiration for the whole thing?
The song was the inspiration, really. It was kind of a weird... excuse me. I'd had Renko and Hicks in my head, and I had the Renko and Hicks relationship in my head, this kind of... these two characters who stand antithetically to one another. I wanted to do a kind of an anti-buddy movie, a story where they're never going to fall in love, they're never going to be best friends, they're never going to trust each other, but we kind of want them to. And the idea is that, every episode you're thinking, oh my God, please trust him or please trust her, and they nearly do, and they never quite manage it. But I didn't know what world that story was going to take place in. So there is an alternative universe where there's a Renko and Hicks story which doesn't take place against the end of the world. It's just those two characters. But one day I was kind of auditing my books. And I kind of edit my books a couple of times a year, and I was throwing books into a box for charity, and I was playing David Bowie, and 5 years came on, which is a song that I love. And I don't know how many people know the song. And yeah, it was, of course, on the show. But it's a song wherein Bowie is the narrator. There's learned that the world has only got 5 years left, and in what in lesser hands could have been kind of nihilistic and maudlin, in fact becomes a celebration of everything. He's looking at all the people, all of the quotidian, everyday things, the tall, short people, the fat, skinny people, and in the light of the inevitability of its destruction, everything is afforded sudden, infinite value. Everything means everything in the light of its destruction. And I thought, oh Christ, that's the world of Renko and Hicks. That's the world that we can tell that story against. So that's how it came to be.
Kate, now you after a glorious history at the BBC, you left and to take charge of Euston Films, this new kind of offshoot of Fremantle. Is that right? And I grew up watching Minder and the Sweeney, and they even did a Quatermass, didn't they? They did a Quatermass reboot, classic, Nigel Neal.
It's not a big influence on the show.
Right, well, I was going to ask you about that in a sec. But, so, were you looking for projects that fitted a kind of reboot of Euston Films? Or
Not actively. I think you can't look outside in at your slate and what you want to develop, but I knew I wanted, to work with Neil, and I really wanted Neil to bring something to us. And actually, it was only when we started developing this that we both realised, didn't we, that this was a very Euston Films project, actually. It's something about that kind of those ordinary people on the ground coming across something that's bigger than them and having to deal with it. And I think Neil has a real fondness for the Euston Films back catalogue, as do I, and knows it actually better than I do. And I think that somehow around when we were discussing this in the early days, he kind of went, this is a bit of a Euston Films show, actually, so it feels like it's meant to be. And it's a very precious burden to be carrying the Euston Films history and with us.
There was a description of Euston Films storytelling, which was maybe from Troy Kent, I don't know. But Euston Films storytelling was described as kick, bollock, scramble, which I think is perfect. And in fact, Jim gets to say that line in the show. Hicks gets to say quick, kick, bollock, scramble.
One of my favourite lines.
Yeah. And of course, it's one I didn't write. You're so unkind, yeah.
About you need psychiatric help, mate.
Another good one. Full of them.
These are two great kind of kick-ass roles for both of you, really. I mean, when you first got the script, Agnes, what did you think of this project? Did you think, oh, this is an incredible role for...
Yeah, I mean, on page 3 with that fight, I was like, who is this woman? And I mean, it's just gripping all the way through as a script. You just want to read more and more. And, she's just so enigmatic and strong-willed and introverted and introspective and strange and a bit on the spectrum. And it's just really refreshing to play a woman that isn't sexualized or, doesn't have the usual projection of, like, the lover or the chemistry thing. So it was really...
And how much did you, how did you get involved? Were you just sent the script and asked, did you audition? How did the whole process?
I did a self-tape.
That's always a secret.
Yeah.
It's like the confessional.
I mean, I'm like, let me tell you, I fought for this role like that.
The truth is, we all live in a big house together.
Down, yeah.
We're like the monkeys. We live in a big house.
I paid a lot of people off.
She's come in disguise tonight.
Did you talk to Neil, did you know that kind of roughly what the character backstory was, and did you ask questions about how much it was going to be revealed about her story, or did you just get that first script and think, oh yeah, this is a kind of fascinating?
Yeah, I think I got 3,
Okay.
or 1 and 2. And then when we started, we basically badgered Neil constantly about, it was just so amazing to have him there and available for every little thing, why is this happening, where did this come from in your head? So we had like this other point of view, which was priceless.
And what was it like filming that first scene? That's pretty intense action there. Yeah,
Jojo.
It kind of does look.
We ended up like really punching each other a lot and hitting each other with kettles over the head, and we were very bruised at the end of it. But we were laughing in between takes because we were like stabbing each other. There was lots of shouts like "ow" and "cut."
Yeah, the director had to shout stop rather than cut. Please don't shout cut.
Because we were carrying on. He was shouting cut and we were just carrying on. He was like, stop!
And Jim, your guy, he's a bad guy, isn't he? He's an interesting mix.
He's an interesting mix rather than a bad guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Neil writes such incredible sort of intricate, complicated characters, that all sort of exist in this sort of grey zone, Everybody has a sort of perspective and an agenda, and you can sort of go along the path and sort of join each character and see their perspective and try and understand where they're coming from. Yeah, I mean, the character definitely wrong-footed me from the off, to introduce a character with a shotgun and a balaclava, cut to him making a green smoothie. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of sold on that alone. That's when I knew I wanted to get involved. And it was wrong-footing me all the time as I was reading it. But he's a man who cares very deeply about his family. So to sort of see him make some of the decisions that he does is very confusing. But that only adds to the sort of intrigue of who he is and the journey of both of these characters as you kind of learn more and more, about their situation.
Yeah, you're right. We see him doing bad things, but he isn't necessarily a bad guy. And I guess as the series gets
more complicated than that, for sure.
Yeah, this is an extraordinary mix of genres, Neil. That strikes me. And we talked when we were speaking before the event. You mentioned Nigel Neal of Quatermass fame, and there's science fiction, there's conspiracy, there's crime drama, there's kind of this interesting relationship. Were you throwing it all in? Were you kind of confident? Yeah, I can keep all these plates spinning.
No, I wasn't confident at all. I mean, the show is a bit of a juggling act. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's lots of different genres. There's lots of different stories. There's a lot to cram into an hour. But really, I just want to make telly that I wanted to watch. So everything in there is stuff that I love. I love crime drama. I love 1970s conspiracy thrillers. I don't know if people remember Nigel Neal, the guy who created Quatermass, but the greatest television writer of all time. So there's a huge amount of influence from Nigel Neal in there. And
did you go back and watch that stuff? Did you watch it?
I just watch it constantly anyway. I just.
He was always sending us things to watch.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Days of the Condor.
3 days of the Condor.
I had to watch that.
Quatermass, of course, and the Stone Tape. And but the thing is, it's done. I think the trick is with stuff like this, as far as there is a trick, is it's not done in any calculating fashion. It's just stuff that I love. Wouldn't it be great if? And oh my God, what if we? So it's trying to create something new, but out of elements of stuff which I just have spent my life.
Also, it's worth saying with Neil. Neil writes in an incredibly organic way and writes very much with the actors in mind. And as you see, as the series develops, it really becomes as much Jim and Aggie's Renko and Hicks as Neil's Renko and Hicks. He really is. And the person who, Charlotte said that Nikki Mooker-Bird would be here this evening. In fact, Nikki's on stage in Lady from the Sea at the Donmar. A couple more weeks to see it. But Nikki's role as Grace is an absolutely classic case in point. Is that do you want to talk a bit about Grace, actually?
Oh, great. I mean, Kate's being very kind. What Kate means is I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and I just got to I make it all up as I go along. But one of the joys of the process is partly in kind of writing little characters that surprise you by coming to life. Grace was originally conceived to be a very small bit part in the first episode. I liked the character, and so I kind of wrote her into episode 2, and because I wrote her into episode 2, we decided to cast her properly, and so we, you know, by the luck of the gods, we spoke to Nicky Amuka-Bird, who's brilliant, and Nicky Amuka-Bird was so amazing in the role that we decided not only to keep Grace across the entire show, but in fact to make her one of the major characters. And so it's one of the advantages of working in the slightly chaotic way that I do is that we are able to tack around kind of found situations like that. You know, so Grace was not part of the plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but now very much is.
She announced
yeah.
herself and.
Yeah, she did. You know, you know who we are.
So
Yeah.
did the two of you did they receive these, like the 3 days of the Conjuring, these things to watch? Did you watch any of those things? Did you steep yourself in the stuff that influenced Neil at all?
We hadn't got time to
No.
Really. It was pretty grueling, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, once we started filming, it was probably, I mean, it was one of the most intense experiences on set I think I've ever had, you know.
Yeah.
And the kind of interesting thing is that, you know, with anything I've done before, you, even if it's been television, you kind of know the beginning, you know the middle, and you know the end. But as we were filming this, we were getting the scripts as it was kind of coming along, you know. I knew the first 3 scripts, I think, and then, you know, so we were just on this conveyor belt and learning about our characters as we were sort of going. And then you'd be emailing Neil going, "Fuck is that?
What?
You have to explain this to me, you know."
And I would pretend to know. That's how TV
And that made
is.
it very exciting,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a really exciting journey to kind of go on, you know.
And like, am I right in saying this is the first like proper TV drama you've done, like serial drama?
Yeah, I mean, the only TV.
Right.
Yeah, so to do 6 episodes back to back was a shock to the system. I remember after the first vlog, I turned to Jim and was like, "Oh my God, I have to do that again. And then I have to do that again. Oh my God, I have to do that again."
And that fight between the two of you by the Thames, that's a pretty extraordinary fight. How was that? How was filming that? Did you go too far in that fight as well? Did the director have to?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
really?
I mean, no one got
I had my nose
hurt. There
taken
was
off.
no blood. Everyone was happy. We were friends at the end.
Basically what Agnes is saying is that she didn't punch me in the face with a knuckle
didn't.
duster right across my nose. Yeah, no, it was amazing because it was actually one of the first, me and Agnes met at the read-through, and within sort of minutes we were rolling around on a, you know,
Rehearsing
stunt
that
mat,
fight,
rehearsing
yeah.
that fight. And it was one of the first things we sort of did together. And yeah, we got to know
we
each
were
other pretty
we're like, "Hi, I'm Agnes," and then I'm pretending to bite your arm.
That's how quickly we kind of were thrown into it, yeah. Jim, this is Agnes, Jim. Right, have a
Right.
roll around. Yeah. Have a nibble on his arm. Yeah. So, yeah, and it was something that we rehearsed for a long time, you know, and when it came to the day of filming it, it was freezing. that day. I
Freezing,
mean, we were filming it in
February.
February on the Thames, the water was, you know, the wind was kind of coming off the water, and it was about as brutal as it kind of
Been
gets.
doing it all day.
We've been doing it all day, and then we both got 2 different notes at the same time. So Brian
And I
spoke
said,
to
"You need to sell," because
You need
it
to
was
come in
like,
closer.
"Your left hand, Ags, you need to sell it. You need to like come down with the punch, down with the punch."
Meanwhile,
I was
the
like,
stuntman's
okay.
telling me, "Jim, you need to just come up a
"Come
bit.
up a bit, come up a bit." Just
Help-
like
help Agnes kind of
show
sell
your
the punch a
face,
bit.
show your face.
Then you can imagine the rest, yeah. There
And then
was
there's
blood kind of spilling
I'm
out of my
crying.
nose. I looked up at because the thing is, on a film set, everyone just kind of swarmed me, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, are you all right? You okay? You fine?" And I looked up at Agnes, and she's all on her own,
my own
like
on the
standing
beach,
on the beach,
crying.
crying. And I'm like, "I'm
Like
fine,
going like this
I'm
with my
fine."
hand.
Oh, it's like the Harrison Ford Ryan thing from Blade Runner, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did it first.
You did it first.
Yeah.
And
And I'm Ryan.
Yes,
In it.
he's-
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
yeah.
make that clear. On top of all of that, you're filming it all clearly on location. This is like
Yeah.
incredible use of London. Is that
Yeah,
hard?
exactly.
How it looks?
Oh my God, that is hard. It is hard. You know, I mean, I actually ended up in a round table with our mayor, who was talking about wanting to make London a really film-friendly city, and whereupon every other producer who was in the room with me just sort of said the same thing: parking, Sadiq. it is, filming in London it's just very expensive, and the places you can park up a truck get fewer and fewer, and the restrictions.
So the first day of shooting, you were sat in a car and there was a drunk throwing furniture at you.
That is true. Yeah.
And you were told you could film on one side of the road but not the other. We were like, we got a permit. So it's difficult. But I think, it is an incredibly cinematic city, mainly because it's so different. Every vista is different. Every kind of shot gives you something else. And we spent a lot of time at the beginning, didn't we, talking about what felt like London, and it was the juxtaposition of the old and the new, and the kind of those little kind of particular shots that you got, and we kept wanting to see the sun in the sky against the buildings, and it became a language that all the directors embraced and all the DOPs embraced, I think.
Yes, sorry.
Do you have that look in mind when you're writing? Do you have a kind of certain style and a certain...
Yeah, London is as much a psychological territory as it is a real one, and if you're setting a kind of a story in London, there's infinite Londons that you can set it in. So we talked a lot at great length about specifically the kind of London that we were going to tell the story in, and there's a lot of, in the show, there's a lot of the old abutting the new. And Brian Kirk, our first director, described it best actually. He said that it's the kind of science fiction of everyday life. And what I like about that as a visual and a kind of narrative notion is that it's showing London kind of efflorescing and growing into a future which isn't there. So it's kind of cool.
And you're right, you got Dr. Brian Cox involved in terms of the scientific...
Prof. Cox.
Prof. Cox.
Yeah.
So Dr. Prof, yeah. So you did some research, and you kind of made sure that the theory...
We had a lunch.
Yeah. How did he contribute?
Yes. We had a lunch.
Apart from lunch.
I like to read kind of popular cosmology to relax.
We all do.
Yeah. So it's something which really, really interesting, because it's something I can't quite grasp, and there's a kind of poetry to it and a grandeur, and it's of a scale that you can kind of, you get a flicker of metaphor and suddenly you see it and then it's gone again. So I like the sense of what Nigel Neal would have called cosmic horror, the sense of the sheer inhuman vastness of the cosmos, and how that correlates and corresponds to our very, very small but still meaningful humanity. But we wanted to make sure that the science fiction in the show, which becomes ever more apparent as the show goes on, is in fact grounded in some kind of science fact. So, what we don't reveal what the hard sun event is, and all the way through we're asking, what is hard sun? And what it is hopefully unlikely, but according to Prof. Cox, possible. So I'm happy.
Interesting. And without, I guess this could partly give something away, but is it an open-ended? So could it be a long-going series? Would you like it to be an ongoing?
You have 5 years.
Oh yeah, I have a
Who's in the title?
I have a 5-year.
But it will come to an end.
Yeah.
At some point.
I don't know. Everything I write ends up shooting in January in London.
On a night shoot.
On a night shoot.
There's just so many night shoots. Yeah.
So season 2's in the summer.
Right. Yeah, it should be hot in the sun. It's all about.
Well, yeah, there's no reason not to do that.
The sun's much lower in the sky in London, particularly in the autumn, in the winter. So you really see it. It's very visible.
One of the reasons that we selected this particular hard sun event is because I wanted to have a hard out for the show. I wanted to have a kind of brick wall that the world was hurtling towards, because it doesn't give us an easy way out. It doesn't give us an easy solution, so we're always going to be hopefully pushing the story and twisting the story in all kinds of different directions. There is in this scenario no deus ex machina. There isn't a miracle that can save us. It just is. Unless the BBC wants 6 series.
We'll just go around again.
Yeah.
And in terms of, do you guys go? Was it? It feels like a really big show. Watching it there on the screen, like very cinematic. And did it feel that way when you're making it, or are you just kind of dealing with the day-to-day challenges of being in it?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's a bit. The concept is so vast, you know, and so huge. I mean, we were sort of really just tied up in the kind of intricacies of our characters as well. I mean, it's kind of like what Neil said. You know, you could make a show just based around the two kind of characters and their sort of cat and mouse relationship that they have with each other. This sort of strategic play that they kind of keep, you know, outdoing each other and investigating each other. But yeah, like Neil said, you know, that's exciting enough. But then to put the kind of concept of the end of the world as the sort of umbrella of all of that, you know, turns it into a giant, vast kind of idea. Yeah, so it was amazing to see London look really grand and cinematic in that sort of a way. And we were blessed that, you know, we had a kind of month for each episode roughly, you know, which is a pretty good amount of time to really kind of work hard and make and do it properly, you know.
So it's like each episode is a film.
Yeah, it's like exactly, yeah. So yeah, on that sense, we were sort of blessed, and you could sort of, I mean, of course, you're just, it's very internal when you're sort of working on it as an actor, but you know, we sort of hope that the idea was as big as we wanted it to be.
It was very hard work for the two of them because the whole point of a story like this is the portal is them. You're at ground level with them. You come across. I mean, you tease it a bit ahead of them in the first episode, but you come across it emotionally with them. So they were really.
And to be fair, on a kind of the most practical level possible, that we knew as the scripts were being submitted, that we were pushing the boundaries of what technically was available in the time available, what technically achievable in the time available. So it was a tough shoot. We knew it was going to be a really tough shoot going in because the scripts were incredibly demanding. You know, I think there's the average number of scenes in an hour-long script. I think is 80, 85, something like that. And in Hard Sun episode 1, it's 130. You know, and so you know, with every different scene,
well,
it's
whose
different.
fault is that?
Yeah, it's entirely my fault.
What would you say is the toughest scene to shoot? You could mention it.
It was probably at the end when we were a slither of our former selves. I mean, in some of those locations where it was dusty, remember the...
Asbestos, yeah.
Asbestos.
I remember that.
It's non-stop
building.
glamour on this show.
Actual asbestos, that's good.
Yeah, the real thing. That's the method.
The night shoots were tough, you know, because it was freezing cold, you know, and you never see that on film. It always pisses me off when you watch a film and you can never see how cold it actually is. You know?
We have 10 pairs of thermals on underneath.
Act warm, darling, act warm.
But yeah, I think maybe like the outside, I think you saw it in here when we were jumping over that wall and jumping off the bus stop and stuff, because you're being chased, and I get so into that I think I'm being chased, and then I like throw myself off the bus stop.
And you jumped on that guy on the bike. That was pretty.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty tough. I was so bruised afterwards.
Tom Cruise, do you do all your own stunts?
I did actually. The stunt guys were like said to us, didn't they? That we'll teach you everything, but then.
Aggie's an ace stunt driver.
I
That
don't
was
do
our
the bike
big.
thing, really.
That was our really big discovery. Is she shot backwards in that car, and on the rushes you look pretty.
Well, I shit
alarmed.
myself. Yeah. It was a constant like white knuckle ride for me. It was like the passenger in Agyness Deyn's driving, you know. And I remember on the first day she was really cautious and just kind of looking around. And so and then she said to
Brian
me,
knocked on the window and was like, I can't do a Northern Irish accent. But he was like, Aggie, you're not on your driving test, mate. I was like, okay, Jim and I's first day together, and I was like, I'll go a bit faster next time.
But then she suddenly went, fuck this, I'm Renko, and then fucking went, and then it was like, and then it was on, and then like her driving around those kind of, when you're in those multi-story car parks and you're kind of going up.
That
and was a pretty
awesome.
hairy experience. Yeah.
It looked very real. I mean, I know that car park.
Yeah. I had to dive out of the way of that car about 3 times.
Yeah. Were you there on set much? Because obviously you live miles away.
As little as I possibly could be, because I said it all at night. I was not as much actually as I would have liked to have been. I was around for the first few weeks of the shoot, but I had to go and finish the final episodes, which is one of the disadvantages of being a one-man band, you know. And I live a long way away, which is both good and bad.
And obviously, it does feel. I mean, Luther was a show that felt very big for detective drama, and this feels even bigger and more ambitious in scope and everything. When you see it on screen like this, does it kind of look like roughly what you had in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I find it, as my nerves when I came up here after the screening demonstrated, I find it intensely stressful watching it with human beings. It's very strange. I've never seen anything I've written broadcast on television, ever. So watching it here with an audience was like having an audience on my wedding night. It was
why didn't you watch it on television?
Well, it's in New Zealand, you know. I mean, that's the trouble. You'd have to wake up in the middle of the night.
And also, I just don't. It's just weird. It's and partly because you've seen it 100 times. It's only recently that I've not got a migraine watching the final. After watching it, 110,000 times through the whole process of post-production, you get the final version, and you're so familiar with it that, but even so, after all of that tweaking and all of those changes and hearing the music, the difference that the music makes, which is extraordinary, when you've got the final version, that's it. And it always makes me feel a bit sick, because you just want to twiddle and tweak. And,
we should mention the music. So the music is pretty...
Neil Davidge did it, and he did Neil Davidge, known to some as Davros, part of Massive Attack, another boy from Bristol called Neil, which is much to be encouraged.
Yes, they used to go very Neil and very Bristol on us on the
well, yes. Hello, Neil, you're right. I'm all right, Neil, you're right. Yeah. We've been beaten up in the same places, which is always nice. And yeah, I gave him the most kind of extraordinarily unconnected series of kind of notes that, we want the music to go in. I talked about, do you remember when shows had theme tunes like The Persuaders, all those great old spy shows? So I said, I want a bit of John Barry, want a bit of Specials, want a bit of, all of these things which couldn't possibly work together. And Neil just kind of went, all right, my lover, and went off and did it.
We kept saying we want the sun noise.
Yeah, the sun noise.
That's that kind of groan that you hear. Yeah, and we did our sun noise, and Neil kept saying, more sun noise, bigger sun noise.
I've got this ambition that over the course of the show, I want to make people frightened of the sun. That's the...
I'm already.
Oh, there you go.
I'm going to open it up to the audience in a sec, but presumably you had to make sure you'd get the rights to 5 years by David Bowie. I mean, without that. So was that easy, difficult?
Do you know what? I suspect it was ruinously expensive. I haven't asked.
Okay.
The only real kind of creative debate that we had was when to use the song. I was, until the very, very last minute, I was in a minority of one. I didn't want to use it in the first episode. I thought, it's just gonna blow our wad. We need to save it because we've got, the final shot of the final episode of the first season is quite a big one. And I'm like, well, let's save it for that, because it's going to have a real emotional impact. And everybody told me I was wrong. I knew I was right. Everybody persisted, and they said, look, just watch a cut with it. So it was only a few weeks ago
that
I finally kind of capitulated and went, okay, you're right, I'm wrong.
It was also that final cut that we did when you put the faces that they were, I think that's what really earned it, wasn't it? Yeah. The faces that they were remembering and thinking of, and that you see that Renko's still so connected with Daniel, and that Hicks is thinking of his, both families, and then that great shot of Grace. You think, oh God, she's coming back.
That still gives me goosebumps, actually, that bit. That's still now, I think. It's
good montage. Right, let's throw it open to the audience.
Yeah, I think Neil Davidge, one of Neil Davidge's great kind of talents, in part is a function of his experience, is that he understands the value of silence. So, in fact, although I think the score in Hard Sun is exceptional, there is also a lot of silence in there. And I don't think, well, we've got an audience there. I don't think the music at any point obscures any of the dialogue, does it? I think we found that balance quite well. And it's true that sometimes music is misused in drama. Sometimes music is used to tell an audience how to feel, because that's one of the available tricks in the box. Sometimes I think it's something which you want to avoid. Sometimes you find yourself in a position where in order to save the day, you might have to pull out that particular trick. But I think, again, we avoided
Neil
that.
was looking for a music cue that frightened his dog. That was one of the
It's
main
true,
aims,
yeah.
wasn't it? It
The
was
hard
like,
sun noise.
The sun,
I
yeah.
kept saying, look, it's got to be deeper, it's got to be deeper, it's got to be bassier and bassier.
"Find my dog."
And they kept sending me another one, and it's good, but it's not, I'm not terrified. And then they sent me the last one, and my dog was in the room, and I played it, and my dog just howled and ran away. And I said, that's the one.
Question answered.
It's quite weird. I started as a novelist, and I was trained as a novelist, so I write scripts like a novelist. I never write with an actor in mind, and I think that's quite a liberating way to do it, because you allow the fictional characters to speak to you entirely. The only time I ever write with an actor in mind is when a guest or secondary character won't quite come to life, and then I kind of cast a dead actor. So I might write something for Cary Grant, just to find a voice for somebody. And the process of casting is a process of discovery, and it's entering into that process is always kind of slightly nerve-wracking, because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what fate's going to throw up, and you have to balance your preconceptions about the character. You have to balance that against having an open mind and seeing what an actor might bring unexpectedly to the character. And mostly that's the process. And sometimes, very, very rarely, you just get lucky and you go, oh, okay, it's her, or okay, it's him, and that happened twice on this show. It's not a new subject. Sorry, am I speaking too much here? I hear my own voice. But I think end-of-the-world narratives are perennial. And, at least from biblical times, and we know that flood narratives predate the Bible by, other thousands of years, he says arbitrarily, lots of time. There are very, very many very old flood narratives. But I think what most end-of-the-world stories are about is not, in fact, nihilism, and is not, in fact, about the end of the world. It's about a great transformative event that will allow us, through the action of characters with whom we identify, to express our best selves. So I think what end-of-the-world narratives do is they strip everyday characters of the everyday. So all of the everyday worries of bill paying and getting the kids to school and getting to work on time and making sure that your mum's okay, that's all gone. And you're stripped down to your essential self. And we all like to fantasize that our essential self essentially is a hero. And that we discover that we're audacious and we're heroic and we will push ourselves to the absolute limit on behalf of people we love. And I think at the moment, there's a global sense, not without good reason, that the world has gone from a skid to an uncontrolled skid. And for the first time in generations, it's possible to look a year hence and not be able to imagine what the world's going to look like, let alone 5 or 10 years hence. And I think that because end-of-the-world narratives allow us to play out this kind of eventuality, that's why essentially they're life-affirming.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
I know what the final scene is.
Oh, I was going to ask you that.
I
You don't have it.
Yeah.
You do.
Awesome.
You always said, Neil, that you saw this as a show about hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I have to say, in fact, I know what the final scene is because I stole it from something. Oh. I stole it from a great British film from days of yore.
Well, don't tell them that.
I'm not.
now.
Well, I'm not going to.
There's
There
clues
are
there.
many.
Look at it.
How many days of yore? What
12. It's an old British film, and it's a cinematic moment that I love, and I'm going to completely steal it.
Have you plotted out in your mind, like, do you go for a series and how far it's going to go? Is that all clear?
Yeah, I think one of the joys of working with Jim and Agnes is watching the relationship develop, and also watching how far you can push the characters and push the actors. Right? And it's kind of written in the DNA of the show that it can change and develop. There's no reason why in season 5 Hicks can't be holed up in a compound in the Lake District. I just had that idea. I'm going to write it down.
Hawaii.
Jim. Can we make that Hawaii?
Yeah. Somewhere lovely and warm.
Season 5, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And how do you feel? I was going to also ask quickly. It was announced that it's going to be available as a box set, and the binge is the fashion. Are you fully in favour of that? Is that kind of is that partly? Did you conceive it as a thing that could be watched all in one big go?
I think it's hit with the kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole box setting thing is a function of the faith that the BBC has in the show, and because of that, I think it's a great thing. I think it's an exciting thing for us.
I think it's exciting. I mean, it's really interesting to see how audiences approach things in different ways. And I was being shown some research the other day that says that, and it's not just the very young, that a lot of people use iPlayer as a primary thing now. It's the first port of call. It's where they go and see what's on rather than just as a catch-up. So I think it's a real leap forward to think of us in that way. And as Neil says, it's a kind of a little bit of a gulp, but we're excited about it.
No, I mean, one of
Depends how we behave.
there might be more nose punching to come. One of the, and when I say joys, I don't mean it lightly. One of the joys of this show has been finding Jim and Aggie for Renko and Hicks, who and it's a kind of it's a once in a lifetime bit of alchemy. It's something which doesn't happen twice. And frankly, we can't believe our luck. And so when you got something which is working that well and that perfectly, why fuck with it?
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That is a great note to end. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Neil and Kate and Agnes.
Thank you for coming, everyone.